Help! I forgot my passcode, or my device is disabled. Okay, to start everything off here, I've got a warning. Do not attempt to do these steps while you are watching the video. There is something that is really key that you could end up screwing up, and it will be a disaster if you find yourself in this situation. So I never know who's going to be using a Mac or a Windows computer, but for those of you using a Windows computer, if you're using iTunes, there is something that you could royally screw up, and it will create a huge nightmare for you. So do yourself a favor. Watch this whole video, then go back and do the steps, and at that point, follow along and do the steps during the video. But for crying out loud, I'm warning you now, do not attempt to do these steps on the very first time you're watching this. You can screw something up severely. With that being said, let's get to the video. Hello and welcome to iPhone Black and White Troubleshooting, where we figure out what's going wrong with your device and get you fixed as quickly as possible. In this video, we are going to be going through the steps that the people need to take if they forgot their passcode or they just don't know what the passcode is. Maybe somebody changed it on them. And the second possibility is for someone who has a disabled phone. So if you look at your device and it says disabled, connect to iTunes or connect to a computer, if that screen is showing up, then this video is for you. I'm also telling people who are going through the activation lock process, if you've successfully had your activation lock removed, I'm telling people to watch this video because the steps that we are going to take here are the steps that you would need to take as well to erase your phone and set it up again. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Alrighty guys, so we have a little bit of information that we have to go over before we do all of this and go through all of the steps that we need to take. So the one thing I just kind of want to stress here is regardless of how you find yourself in the situation, everything's going to be okay. The first thing that I want to warn everybody about is when you do these steps, you need to make sure that you are using a cable that is an Apple certified cable, preferably a cable that came with the device or a cable that you had to go buy. I know that Apple is not shipping charging cables anymore, but you're going to need a cable, whether it's a USB or a USB-C, however it's going to connect to the computer. However it is that you need to make sure that you are using an Apple cable. The reason that this is so incredibly important is because if you are not using an Apple cable, there's a really good chance that you are going to run into an error later on. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you an article showing you all the different error messages that you might encounter. And I'm not going to go through all those error messages, but the main culprit for why people get an error when they try to do these steps is they are not using the correct cable. Alright, so I've got to stress this just to save you some headache. Alright, so let's go ahead and now get to the steps. Alright, so obviously you need the device, you need to have the Apple cable, and you've got to have a computer. And it has to be a computer. It cannot be a tablet. You can't do this on an iPad or like a Chromebook. You've got to have a computer. Now, technically, the problem that you're having would be considered a software issue. So if you do not have a computer, the best thing to do would be to borrow one from a friend or family. If you have to go over to their home in order to do this, you would also be able to make an appointment and go to an Apple store and use one of their computers there. If you were to try to go to an Apple service provider like a Best Buy, if you do that, because it's a software issue, the Apple service provider would have the right to charge you for trying to do these steps. This wouldn't be necessarily something they could do for free. So the best way to do this is either at an Apple store on one of their computers, or more preferably using a computer that either you have or you can borrow from a friend or family. So regardless of whether or not you forgot your passcode or if the device is just disabled. So the article we're using is from support.apple.com if you forgot your iPhone passcode. Now, there's kind of a key thing here as far as the steps go, and I'm going to show you here in a second why I actually prefer a different article than this. But okay, so like it's saying, step one, make sure that you've got a computer, like I've already stressed to you. So as we get into step two, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, and this is actually why I prefer a second article. This will make sense here in a second. So what this article is telling you to do is to turn off your phone. So like it's saying here, unplug your phone from the computer if it's connected, turn off the phone, and it gives you steps on how to actually turn off your device. And we're going to go ahead and kind of show you the steps here, and then I'm going to show you why I actually prefer a different article to do these steps that actually are a little bit different. I actually think it's a little bit easier to an extent. So it gives you the steps on, depending on what kind of phone you've got, to turn it off. Then it's saying put the phone into recovery mode. So look carefully at what this is saying. So it says get ready by finding the button on your phone that you'll need to hold. And we're going to keep talking about the word hold because this will play a factor here in a minute. So depending on what kind of device you have, it will list everything here. You would be holding down a certain button. So if it's a 10 or later, once the phone is turned off, you're going to plug the cable into the computer, and then you're going to immediately hold down whichever button it's telling you to hold down, depending on what kind of phone you have. You've got to keep holding that button. Do not let go of that button. Why are you holding it for so long? Very simple. Because we are trying to get this screen to pop up on the computer. Not on the phone, but on the computer. This is vitally important. And the problem that people always make in this situation is they're holding down the button, and then all of a sudden the phone will start acting a little bit funky. It might start to flash. Maybe the Apple logo will show up. It doesn't really make any difference. All of a sudden things will start happening on the phone, and then people will say to themselves, oh, I can let go of the button now. I don't have to hold it anymore. Like, no, don't. You've got to keep holding that button until this screen you see right here, and I made it a little bit bigger. This screen has to show up on the computer. If this screen does not show up, you're going to start all over again, and that brings me to why I don't particularly like this article. If you let go of that button and all of a sudden you have to start over again, well, then that means you got to turn off, you got to unplug it from the computer again, you got to turn off the device again, and then you got to start over. That brings us to another article that is called If Your iPhone Won't Turn On or Is Frozen. The difference with this article is the fact that these would be the steps that you would actually take if your device is frozen. However, it turns out it's the exact same screen that we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to the recovery screen. This is the exact same screen that we would be getting that would pop up onto the computer. So whether it's on this screen or that article or this article, it's actually the exact same screen. And then it's going to depend on which situation you would find yourself in if you would be clicking on update or restore. So spoiler alert right here, if you forgot your passcode or your device is disabled, once we get to this restore screen or to the recovery screen, you are going to have to click on restore. Okay, so that is the whole essence of why I don't care for this article. So, okay, you're saying, well, then what would be the steps that I would do over here? Well, it's actually, in my opinion, a little bit simpler. You would go ahead and plug your phone into the computer. You do not need to turn it off. And then you would see the steps here. Depending on what kind of phone it is, most people are going to have an 8 or later. And your steps would be relatively simple. You're going to press and quickly release the volume up button, press and quickly release the volume down button, as it's kind of showing you here. Hit volume up, volume down, and then hold the power button. Do not let go of that power button. You're going to keep holding that button until the recovery screen shows up. So this is kind of your decision. Which steps do you think would be easier? Because both articles, both steps lead us to the recovery screen. So it's up to you which one you would find easier. I find this article to be easier because if you do let go of that button, no big deal. Just start over. Volume up, volume down, hold the power button, don't let go. If you do it the other way and you make a mistake, okay, now unplug the cable, turn off the device, then plug the cable back in, and then hold down the button. And then one way or the other, y'all, you're going to end up getting to this screen because this is the most important thing, is to get to this screen. So now there's something else to kind of discuss here in regards to a question that some people might have. So let's address this real quick. Okay, so real quick, this would be a question that a lot of people are going to have about whether or not they can make a backup. If you're somebody who's watching this because you're going through the activation lock process, no, it would be too late for you. For those of you who have a disabled phone, in a rare circumstance, you might be able to get away with something, which I'm going to cover here in a second. But pretty much you can't make a backup anymore. It's too late for you. For those of you who just simply don't know what your passcode is, you actually could still try to make a backup. The reason I say that is if you were already making backups to the iCloud before, you actually would still have the ability to just leave your phone plugged in overnight. The device will still back up to the iCloud, because the passcode is no longer a part of the backup. So you would actually be able to go ahead and do that. So if you want to do that, hey, knock yourself out, go ahead and do that. Because obviously we know you can't get into the device to tell it to back up. So that goes for everybody in this situation who's watching this. So that begs the question, though, for people who have a disabled phone. Can you make a backup? The answer is no. You are not going to be able to do a backup, whether you leave it plugged in overnight or not. But if you are somebody who was previously making, or like not backups necessarily, but you were syncing your device to your computer, there's a chance that you could still plug your device into the computer and it will actually recognize the device and then try to maybe sync your photos. If you were not doing that already, if this is like you've never done that before, then the answer is no. You are not going to be able to hook up your device and then have it sync and have it work. Because if it wasn't doing it before, it's not going to recognize it now. So, and it's going to be really rare for anybody to be in the situation that I'm kind of describing. But in the off chance that you have a disabled device and you were syncing it up to your computer before, you can go ahead and make the attempt to just plug in the phone to the computer, open up iTunes or Finder, and then see if it recognizes the device and then attempts to sync on its own, and then import like photos, things like that, but you're not going to be able to make a backup. Okay, hope that makes sense. So now let's go ahead and take a look at our next step on what we would need to do looking at iTunes. Okay, so if you're somebody who is using Windows, in order to go through these steps, remember that iTunes would need to already be open before you attempt to do all of these steps. Like the first steps that I showed you going through those articles, you got to have iTunes open. The second thing that you've got to make sure is that iTunes is updated. It's actually really simple. iTunes usually will ask you if they're, to update it, if there's an update available, but just to play it safe, in order to check, all you need to do is actually go to your help screen. And if you see anything in here that says check for updates, then all you would need to do would be to click on that, and then iTunes will update. If you don't see check for updates, then that means you are running the latest version of iTunes, so it's no big deal. Okay, so this goes back to the beginning of the video when I was warning you, if you're going through these steps, not to do any of these steps. Don't do any of them until you've watched the whole video. Because if you're somebody who is using iTunes and you are now plugging in, let's say you're borrowing a friend's computer, and so you're using their computer, their version of iTunes. This is so critically important. You've got to make sure that if they are signed in on iTunes, they have got to sign out. So what you've got to do is you've got to click on account, and then it'll say sign out. It will show their Apple ID. If it says that there's an Apple ID there, you have to sign out. If you skip this step and someone is signed in here, you are going to end up syncing your device to the computer. You are going to screw everything up. You're going to have to start all over, and you might even screw up their version of iTunes. Like, it will delete a bunch of their music. It will be a nightmare. Do not do these steps until you've made sure that there is nobody signed in on iTunes. Okay? It is vitally important. Okay, so assuming that you have now done the steps that we've covered, and you've made sure that no one is signed in on iTunes, in Finder, you obviously wouldn't need to worry about that. But if you are to these steps now and you have got this screen pulled up, it's going to ask you if you want to restore or update. You have to click restore. So if you don't know your passcode, if you do not know, or if the device is disabled, you have to click restore. Here's what's about to happen once you do this. As soon as you click restore, it'll kind of give you another error message, and it will say something like, hey, this means that we're going to erase this device. You have to go ahead and click like OK. It's fine. There's no way around it. If you're using iTunes, then what's going to happen once you get past that next screen, all of a sudden, usually it's up here in the top right corner, there will be a software update. And so what's happening is whichever program you're using, whether it's iTunes or Finder, it is going to start downloading the latest operating system. It's going to take who knows how long, it just kind of depends. But it's going to download the software update. Once it downloads the software from Apple's server, then the computer is going to start talking to your phone, and it is going to start erasing it. There is a common problem that happens, but guess what? It's fine. Don't panic. So the common problem is that when the computer is trying to download the software update, it actually can take a long time. For some reason, sort of the default time limit on trying to do all of these steps is about 15 minutes. So the common problem is someone will download, go through all these steps, and then they'll, get past the screen, and it will start to download the software update, and then all of a sudden it just says, hey, an error occurred. It wasn't able to erase the phone. It's fine. Don't panic. Do the steps. Start all over again. It's no big deal. And this time it should work. The problem is just simply it ran over that 15-minute time limit. It's no big deal. It doesn't mean that there's anything necessarily wrong with your phone or the steps or whatnot. It basically just timed itself out. So no big deal. You're still going to leave the phone plugged in. So if that happens to you, just leave, volume up, volume down, hold the side button, get that recovery screen to pop back up, and then just click restore, answer the question that it asks you. This will require it to erase. And this time it should work, because now at this point the computer does not need to download the software update again. Instead, it's just going to go ahead, start talking to the phone, and it will erase the phone. Okay, so once you get through all of these steps, I'm going to go ahead and link this article as well. This is setting up your iPhone, iPad, or iPod Touch. Because what's going to happen is it will erase, you will get to your hello screen, and then you are just going to go ahead and set up the device like you did before. I'm going to try to get a video up as well about going through all of the screens. I don't know when I'm going to have that up, but I want to go ahead and link this article just in case. But maybe if you search for my video on how to set up a device, that would pop up as well. And I go through every single screen that you're going to encounter, try to explain each screen. But at this point, you're pretty much on the, on the way home. You're almost done, because if you've gotten this far, once you get to the hello screen, just start answering the questions. You'll put in your Wi-Fi password. It's going to ask you if you want to do quick start. The answer would be no. You're going to do a manual. You would see it right there at the bottom, set up manually. Then you would activate the device, etc., etc. Basically, you'd go through the whole process of setting up the phone again. You would be able to use your Apple ID, sign back into the phone, and pretty much you're done, and you would be creating a brand new passcode. You can use an old passcode, that's fine. And that's it. It's actually a lot simpler. I know this video is a little bit longer than I really wanted it to be, but the steps here are really not that difficult. It's just that you can end up messing something up if you don't make sure that you take it step by step and go slow, and make sure you've got the computer and everything. And guys, honestly, it's not a big ordeal if you get that error message that pops up, says you ran over time. You just start over again, no big deal. Last thing to mention before we wrap it up is I said I would link this article for the iOS update and restore errors. I'm going to go ahead and link this here. But again, odds are if you're getting an error message, you can go ahead and kind of check. It'll give you a number of what the error message is. But for people who are in this situation, typically the problem ends up being that you're using a cable that's a bad cable. All right. Just because a cable can charge your phone does not necessarily mean that that cable is calibrated to transfer data the way it needs to. So if you run into a problem, just try switching out the cable first and then doing the steps again. And if you're not using an Apple cable, that's probably the problem. So just get an Apple cable and try it again, and you should be okay. Alrighty guys, I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that these steps really do help you. You should be good to go. This seems like it would be a lot more complex. It's really not. Just take your time. If you got to rewind the video, watch the steps again, please do so, because you can, if you rush ahead, kind of just, I wouldn't say, make your life more difficult, but you do run the risk of screwing a few things up if you're not careful. So just take your time, go back, start the steps, and honestly, if you're watching this video and then you do the steps, it really won't take you more than maybe an hour from watching the beginning of this video to having your phone set up again and you're ready to use it. So, alrighty guys, with all that being said, thanks so much. I really do appreciate taking the time. If you found this helpful, hit like, hit subscribe, come on back, learn how to become an iPhone expert. Don't forget, send this video to your friends and family so I can turn them into experts as well. Alrighty guys, until next time, see ya.